Hey everyone, Happy New Year, and we want to say Happy New Year and welcome to the very first Radiotopia Presents of 2024. It's a series that we are truly excited about. It's called Shocking, Heartbreaking, Transformative. Now, this is from documentarian Jess Shane, who put out an open call on Craigslist and then worked with 4 strangers to explore the standard rules that documentarians and journalists use to tell their subject stories. So the series gets into all sorts of questions about what happens when people's real lives are collected, edited, and consumed. The show pulls back the curtain on what goes on behind the scenes of your favorite nonfiction shows. And then it turns in on itself and some really interesting twists and turns along the way in the making of the show. I've gotten to know Jess a little bit over the making of this show. Every time I chat with her, there's a new wrinkle to this story. It is really incredible. So go check out the new Radiotopia Presents series, Shocking, Heartbreaking, Transformative. It is out now on your favorite podcast platform. Hey everyone, Jody here. Over the next week, the next 4 episodes, we're bringing you 4 of our favorite conversations from this past year. Maybe you've heard them, maybe you haven't, but we're taking this week off. Hopefully you are getting a little downtime as well. And then we will be back in 2021. Tuesday, the 5th of January is our first new episode of the year. On behalf of everyone at the show, Happy New Year. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon. Hello and welcome to This Day in Esoteric Political History from Radiotopia. My name is Jody Avirgan. This day, August 27th, 2014, well, technically it's August 28th, 2014, but we're going to do it anyway because this is the day of our show. On this day, at a press conference about ISIS and Russia's intervention into Ukraine, President Obama wore a tan suit. And that's basically my intro. President Obama wore a tan suit. So here to talk about why and how and if that was a controversy and what to make of it is, as always, Nicole Hemmer of Columbia. Hello, Nikki.
Hey, Jody.
And our special guest for this episode, host of It's Been a Minute on NPR and a charter member along with me of former hosts of political podcasts who are not doing that anymore, so they're actually getting some sleep in 2020. It is Sam Sanders. Hello, Sam.
Ha. Hello, sir. You'll be happy to know that after my turn at NPR Politics, I don't use an alarm clock anymore.
That is
I wake up when the spirit moves me. It's a great life.
It's glorious. Oh, my goodness.
Oh, yeah.
So, Nikki, this is a controversy, fake controversy, all sorts of sort of interesting things to pick apart. But we should probably talk about some of the specifics of that moment. So, you know, I mentioned, I don't know if there's anything worth clearing up. I think probably it's lost to history that this was during a speech about ISIS and about Ukraine, which, you know, is interesting. Anything else about the actual event and that day that we should discuss or know?
I mean, honestly, no. Like, the headline should have been about ISIS and Ukraine. Those were kind of big issues. But no, it was the tan suit that nabbed all the headlines.
Huh. Sam, do you remember this moment?
I so remember the tan suit. And I remember saying to myself, Barack, what you doing? Because, like, more than any presidential family since perhaps the Kennedys, they knew the power of the visual and they knew the power of their bodies and the clothes that they wear and the symbols that their bodies were, right? Like, you see Michelle and Barack, they were so all-American, and they knew they had to be because they were black, right? Like black bodies are inherently political. And it seemed as if for so long Barack and Michelle knew that, and then Barack wore this tan suit, and I was like, did you forget the lesson, sir? Like, you know how this goes, right?
Right. And famously, you know, Obama had talked about how he only owns 2 colors of suits, or he only owns one suit, right? Because he doesn't want to have to make a decision every day to get dressed. He just wants to go in his closet and pick a suit. So, you know, this kind of played a little bit against that. And then more importantly, the things that you're describing. I mean, Nikki, what were the other things that so bothered people? And we should describe who it was that seemed to be bothered by this moment.
So, first of all, we should say that the people who were most bothered about it seemed to be living on Twitter. And so this is actually one of the first really big Twitter-driven controversies, because it's really that moment when, you know, Twitter had still been a player in, like, the first term for Obama, but it's in the second term that it's really coming of age, and it has the ability to drive headlines in quite this way. But it did not stay on Twitter. It captured quite a lot of headlines, but it also, you know, was used to leverage other criticisms against Obama. So Representative Steve King of New York, a Republican, first denounced Obama as elite, saying he looked like he was on his way to a party at the Hamptons. Now, Obama summers at Martha's Vineyard, but still, and that it signaled weakness. Right, this idea that he wasn't taking his job seriously, that he was not presenting a strong image to the world, that ISIS is going to see that picture of him in that suit, and it's all going to be over.
I think, like, the Barack Obama tan suit scandal underscores for me my theory that all politics would be better if we never saw the politicians. Let's just hear them, and let's just see what their policies are. But, you know, the making of the presidency into a visual spectacle over the last few decades of TV and cable news leaves us with a situation where on the day the president says, I don't have a strategy for ISIS, the biggest news is the color of his suit.
Yeah.
Like, it just shows how much the symbol becomes more important than the message in this cable news era of politics. And it's really frustrating. And I think that, like, I was particularly upset with the think piece writers who tried to draw greater meaning from a fucking tan suit. Like, there were a few fashion critics that said, maybe by wearing this khaki suit, Barack Obama was trying to message and show that he really is wishy-washy on ISIS.
Right.
No!
Yeah.
It's not that. And, like, this reaching for a symbol and a thing that should not be a symbol is a sign that, like, the way that we cover politics is actually kind of broken. But I also think that, like, what I enjoy the most about Barack Obama in this instance, and what I actually always enjoy most about him, is how he manages to throw these soft and silent, gentle, subtle nods to blackness in everything he does. When I think of growing up in the black church, the black guys in my church, myself included, wore every imaginable color of suit.
Yeah.
And so when Obama is doing a tan suit, it may look like an embarrassment to the white political chattering class, but black people got it. Like, they got it. And that's kind of what I appreciate about Barack Obama. Even in his foibles and his mistakes, he is winking at the black section, which I appreciate.
And, you know, it is worth saying that, like, this is not the first president to ever wear a tan suit. I'm working on another project, and I happen to be looking at pictures of Ronald Reagan, and there he is. He's wearing a tan suit. I think it was at a ceremony where the Boston Celtics had won the NBA title, and they came to the White House, and he's wearing a tan suit. You know, especially late in the summer, like, presidents have worn tan suits before. It was just this president and this particular context that seemed to set people off. And, you know, I think your point about how this is so many of the ways in which we cover politics poorly kind of came crashing together in this moment. I mean, we've mentioned Twitter and obviously cable news, but, you know, just kind of this obsession with style over substance, the sort of need for controversy, you know, cable news, Twitter, social media, like, they all really are there in this moment. And I don't think that's necessarily just a right wing or left wing thing. I mean, being enamored with the style of a presidency is actually maybe more of a lefty thing. And that is in here as well, because we've been trained to kind of obsess about the visuals. Yeah. So, you know, it just feels like, on the one hand, a stupid, silly, quote unquote controversy, and on the other hand, like, in many ways, a perfect representation of a lot of the things that are broken. Niki, you and I were chatting before we started taping a little bit about the specific nature of the coverage too. I mean, there were people who were, like, legitimately outraged. I think that's fair to say. But then there was this whole class of people who were, like, ironically outraged, and, you know, there's something going on there too.
Yeah, I don't want to grant anyone legitimate outrage, except for maybe GQ, who had some real sartorial feedback on the fit and the choice of shirt underneath it. But it was used, you know, to make other political points. But if you actually go back and you look at a lot of the news coverage, it's all very winking, and, like, headline writers just wanted to say the audacity of taupe and get it out of their systems. And so you kind of have that kind of tongue-in-cheek coverage, and yet at the same time, like, we were getting 5th anniversary retrospectives on this. Like, this is, you know, as much an issue of the media as it is politics. You got to fill up all of that space, and this was certainly an easy way to do it. You've got nice visuals, and it got a lot of people's attention.
But Sam, by the 5th anniversary, don't you think all of maybe I'm wrong, but didn't it feel like all of the retrospectives were like purely ironic? Like everyone was kind of looking at it as this weird askance thing to then dip back into?
Yeah.
Is it ever ironic when,
Right.
when an ambitious culture or politics writer writes a piece, whether it's ironic or not, they want everyone to read it. That's unironic. They want the exposure. And this is what's so annoying to me, like this entire cottage industry of writers making meaning out of nothing. The things that matter with politicians are what they do and what they say. It makes me mad, but I also know that I'm part of the problem as well, and I don't think it changes. But I think like the tan suit story offers a moment, if we really want to reflect, for journalism, our industry, to say like maybe a quarter of what we write is bullshit.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Well, especially given the media environment. Like, I think to me, part of the lesson here is like, you don't get to dip your toe, unfortunately, but like you don't get to dip your toe into politics and try and be semi-ironic or winking or whatever. Like, it's just our media ecosystem is such that people just do not see those shades, even if you're trying to kind of do it in an interesting way. And so like,
you're
no matter,
in it, whether you think you're above it or not.
Yeah.
Well, like the people writing isn't it so crazy how there is this like industrial complex around Obama's tan suit? By you writing the piece, critiquing it, you're part of it too, right? Like,
and
you're part of the mail
during this episode, Sam.
we are the problem.
I know, but it's like fourth level irony is still kind of putting it out there. I know it's a tough thing.
Exactly.
It's a tough thing to grapple with.
Well, I mean, and like then we see the same thing now, kind of on the worst side, the inflation of QAnon. You know, I can't help but feel like this snowballing happening with media coverage of this fringe conspiracy. Seems as if the more we cover it as a fringe conspiracy theory, the more serious we make it.
Yeah.
And at this point, I think the mainstream news media is doing a better publicity job for QAnon than 4chan ever has.
Right.
Yeah, I actually think this is a really important point because that process of amplification, which I feel like we've really only started digging into in the past 4 or 5 years, if we could take ourselves out of this particular moment and put ourselves back in the tan suit moment and talk about the way that amplification worked then, I think we'd have a better sense of some of the sort of the media powers at play.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, the way I try and square it is always kind of to really check in with the stakes of a story, right? And I mean, with QAnon, I think it's a tougher question, right? It's because it really is a genuine force, and I think at some point it crosses a threshold where the stakes are high enough that you have to discuss it. The tan suit never crossed that threshold, and so I think just saying like what's actually at stake here, what actually is the real world impact of this coverage and this amplification, even if it's ironic, I think that's one at least important starting point for thinking through how to do this. Niki, is this a story that has legs in any sense, both ironically on the right and left, but like, are there any parts of conservative media as you watch it that are still like upset about this?
Oh, yeah. I mean, upset is too strong a word, but in the sort of strings of denunciations of what they now call the Obama-Biden era, certainly the tan suit rears its head every now and again. You know, they don't have a strong, well-dressed model in the presidency right now, so they tend to avoid those issues. But yeah, no, it absolutely comes up. And I think that this story also has new life because it's become representative of the sort of scandal-free Obama era, right? Like, this is what counted as a scandal during Obama's reign. And I think that's what most of the 5th year anniversary, I can't believe there were so many of those pieces, but what those pieces really hinged on was, look, this is the kind of scandal we got to enjoy in 2014. 2019 really misses it.
Sam, any final thoughts?
Obama, wear whatever you want. Just make sure the suit fits. The suit was too big.
Oh, the suit was too big. That's good.
Yes.
I will say, to be perfectly honest, I can't even picture it. I feel like it only lives in my imagination as this like thing that gets brought up every once in a while.
It was a little too big.
It was a little too big. Yeah. Okay, good to know. We're going to leave it there. That is it for this episode. Nicole Hemmer of Columbia, thanks to you as always.
Thank you, Jody.
And Sam Sanders, thanks to you, and you will be back for one more episode after this as well.
I look forward to it. Thanks for having me.
This Day in Esoteric Political History is a proud member of Radiotopia from PRX. Our researcher and producer is Jacob Feldman, along with producer Brittany Brown. Follow us on social media. We're posting a bunch of stuff on Twitter and Instagram each day at ThisDayPod. Thanks to everyone who has reached out with comments and potential topics. You can email us thisdaypod@gmail.com. There's also a contact form at thisdaypod.com. My name is Jody Avergan. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you soon.
Radiotopia.